So thank you for joining the YNYC recruitment webinar for the Activate program. A little bit about who's on the call, and then we'll do the agenda. We'll aim to spend about half the call talking to you, so reserve about half the call for you to ask us questions. You're welcome to drop questions in the chat at any point, and we will respond to those as quickly as we can. So on the call today, we have Andrew Chain, who is the Managing Director of Activate New York. Natasha Feshbach, who is the Fellowship Manager for Activate New York, is on PTO today. I am the Senior Director of Program Optimization for Activate and formerly the Fellowship Manager for Activate New York, so very happy to be with you today. We also have Caitlin Suarez from Cohort 23 and Richard May from Cohort 24, who will share with you a little bit about their experience as Activate New York Fellows. And we have Rick and Kerrigan, although not pictured. They are on the call from our recruitment team and will be helping us respond to questions in the chat. So overall, I will give you a quick overview of the Activate Fellowship, and then I will hand it off to Andrew, who will share a little bit about the Activate New York program and our focus on carbon management. And then I'll jump back in to quickly mention our energy storage partnership and introduce our fellows. I will jump back in after the fellows to provide some quick fellowship overview, application overview items, and then jump into your Q&A. So with that, to talk a little bit about what Activate is. Activate is, above all things, a community. So you can see here our Cohort 23 and 24 fellows and Activate staff at our retreat that kicked off our fellowship year in June in Massachusetts. So we begin every year with a week focused on community, self-reflection, and basics of entrepreneurship. Activate's mission is to empower scientists to reinvent the world by bringing their research to market. So in 2015, we identified a gap between great technological research that was happening in national laboratories and at universities and the capacity to bring that technology to market. And we created the Activate Fellowship to respond to those needs. We exist to support entrepreneurs. We don't charge fees or equity to participate in the fellowship. We are specific to hard tech entrepreneurs. We really value our software friends, but there are specific challenges and opportunities for those of you who are building things, and Activate is here to support you. We're also looking for people who want their technology to ultimately serve a greater purpose. There are global challenges that are facing humanity, including climate and other environmental challenges that many of you are familiar with, and we are looking for folks who want to change the world for the better. What we provide, we provide time and funding. So this is a 2-year fellowship program. During that program, you will get a stipend of $100,000 a year, plus a travel allowance, a stipend for health insurance, and relocation funds if you are moving to a new location to start your fellowship. Your company will also receive $100,000 in research and development funds in the form of a recoverable grant. And if you meet readiness requirements and you're interested, you can access at least $75,000 in additional flexible capital. This is equity funding, and so it's not appropriate for all companies, but it is something that we try to guide you through your first equity raise if that is the direction your company is going for. We also provide an expert community. We have a managing director who's responsible for each community, as well as a network of other experts within Activate, other managing directors, ecosystem experts, fundraising experts, ops and people experts who are at your disposal. We have an additional network of advisors to Activate and to other companies that we are able to put you in touch with depending on your needs. And of course, the community of other fellows and alumni. We run programming throughout the year to build up your classroom experience, as it were, in the things that you are learning in the real world. So curriculum tailored to scientists turned entrepreneurs that we couple with mentorship and with intensive workshops and classes that are geared toward your professional development. And then finally, each Activate community looks out for the places that are best suited to early companies conducting further lab research, prototype building, and first office spaces. Those are specific to each community, but we work with you to identify the right spot for you to continue to build. Overall, we think this works pretty well. So far, we've created just under 200 science-based companies, which have gone on to raise over $2 billion in follow-on funding and to create more than 2,000 new jobs. We're particularly proud to note that 96% of companies created by Activate Fellows are still active, which is a pretty impressive statistic and a testament to the quality of our fellowship and of the fellows themselves. We are in several locations. So, in addition to the Activate New York community, we also have in person communities in Boston, Berkeley, and Houston, as well as our Activate Anywhere community, which is a remote opportunity for folks who are more than 50 miles away from one of these hubs. And you will have an opportunity in your application to identify a first choice community, as well as additional communities that you would be willing to relocate to and participate in. And so just keep that in mind as you're listening today, that it may behoove you to learn about more than one community. And with that, I will biasly say I still think New York is the best community. So I will hand it over to Andrew to talk about why.
Thank you, Eva. Appreciate the wonderful introduction. And I get the pleasure and opportunity to talk about Activate. There's a lot happening in Activate New York, and excited that we have two New York fellows as well to expand on some of their experience and what they're also building in the world. So with that, let's kick off with a little bit about Activate New York. Have to start off with a wonderful picture of our cohort. This is an image that we took earlier this year of both our 2023 and 2024 cohorts together. This was right after our annual retreat. We had it in Boston this year, and it's always a great time to be together with our entire cohort and with the broader ecosystem of Activate, and just being filled with inspiration. When you have hundreds of science entrepreneurs getting together, it can only be a good thing. So, anyways, so what does that mean for New York? Well, a little bit about New York. We had gotten started a couple years ago. It started with a wonderful partnership that we have with NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research Development Authority, as well as Columbia University as our wonderful anchor partners. And we've since grown and expanded those relationships and partnerships across New York City as well as across New York State. And we are supporting fellows that are pioneering all sorts of new breakthrough technologies, from energy storage and biomanufacturing to the whole ecosystem around carbon tech and carbon management, which we will also touch on as well. And we look and we support, all deep tech, hard tech technologies across the spectrum. And in particular, one of the things that's been very exciting about New York is that, a couple of 5 years ago, there wasn't as much deep tech, hard tech activity as there is today. Like, it has just been growing so organically, and it's been such an exciting time to be building in New York, and it's also because of a lot of the fantastic leadership that we have across the city and the state to really support entrepreneurship and hard tech development. So we'll move over to the next slide. A couple of highlights that we have from our second year. We're a growing community. That includes supporting more fellows across more industries. And as that continue to expand, our network compounds, and the ability to support all of our companies compounds. So we're very fortunate to work with a lot of fantastic investors, founders, and ecosystem leaders, across the spectrum, across New York City and New York State, and even over to DC with some wonderful leadership that we've had an opportunity to engage with at DOE as well as the White House. We also engage with a lot of the climate tech ecosystem as well. It has been just so exciting to just be part of a lot of the things that are happening here in New York, including Climate Week, right, which is coming up very soon, 2 weeks away, and where we've hosted a hard tech showcase. Last year, it was a fantastic event where we had a lot of our Activate fellows come and bring their prototypes to show off to all of our ecosystem network, our investor partners and everything like that. And this year we're expanding that yet again. So lots of fantastic things that are happening in New York that we get to be part of, as well as lots of exciting things happening within our Activate network and community in New York. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. Now I'll share a little bit of what does it mean to be a fellow in New York? What are some of the, what does that look like? And the first thing is we get together every other Thursday. It's about a day a week, a day every other week where our fellows get together. It starts with lunch, around 12:30, in this case, 12:45, where we get together and we have lunch. Then we also have a speaker. It could be, a former founder, it could be an investor, it could be a workshop. All these different things we try to do to help support and invest in the growth of our entrepreneurs. So we've done things like fundraising pitch workshop sessions. We've done storytelling workshop sessions. We've done founder stories to really understand some of the scars that a lot of founders go through as they build those companies, because it's never easy. And then we also work to activate the network to bring in potential mentors, advisors, and investors to build some of those social bonds. And sometimes we do that for our Activate friends, and then sometimes we partner with bigger ecosystem partners as well and do something a little bit bigger. And so some of those ecosystem events include doing some happy hours with many like-minded organizations like the Direct Air Capture Coalition, or our friends at SOSV, our friends at other NYSERDA accelerators, and so forth. And then at a quarterly level, we also do quarterly events. One big thing about Activate is our focus on the community. I think that's not enough could be said about that, where you join this community of others that can support you, and for you to support them, as well as we all grow together as this community. A lot of our alumni stay engaged and become fantastic mentors. A lot of alumni that, for a couple years out, that have learned about, what are the right partnerships to structure, and what are the nuances of different particular industries, adds just so much more value to, let's say, what you might be working on. If you are working on, let's say, the carbon removal space, right? There are some intricacies there in the markets, or if you're looking at electricity markets, or if you're looking at cement and commodity markets, right? So there's all these nuances, and our growing alumni community really play a big role there in helping our fellows navigate these dynamics. And then, on a yearly basis, we also like to get together. And one of the things that we do every year is an annual retreat. Going back to that very first picture that we showed, that was at the end of our annual retreat, where we spent a number of days with our Activate community across all the communities, and we have now 5 communities, and so that was over 100 Activate fellows that were getting together for almost a solid week. So lots of ways to build community, to interface with other founders throughout the year. Okay, next slide. A little bit more. We do spend quite a bit of time, in the climate ecosystem here in New York. This is a area that's just been growing like crazy in New York, and we are wonderful, beneficiaries of. So we have had the opportunity to collaborate with a lot of fantastic thought partners, like our friends at Climate Tech BC, also known as CTBC. It's a Substack that has a wide following on the investment side and founder side. We have a lot of engagement with ecosystem leaders at the city state level, of course, through our partnership with NYSERDA. And then we're engaging with a lot of the accelerator programs and other programs within New York that where we just want to where you can benefit from just the commingling what's going on, whether that be with New Lab out in the Navy Yard where they have a lot more space for a lot of hard tech building, and lots of exciting things are happening in Brooklyn these days, to Urban Future Lab and their strong connection to NYU, of course, with Columbia, and so on and so forth. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about our focus on carbon management. There is a little bit of a concentration that we have here. Again, we do support any technology, that is hard tech and physical. We really focus on atoms, that are not bits, as Eva mentioned, but we do potential focus here on carbon management, and so I'll talk a little bit about that as well. So let's go to the next slide. Um, so on the carbon management side, we look at a lot of companies that are on the capture and drawdown. We look at all sorts of drawdown technologies and pathways, direct air capture, point source, enhanced rock weathering, oceans removal, things like that. We look at a lot of the utilization pathways as well, from carbon to fuels to chemicals to building materials. And then, of course, we look at all sorts of storage mechanisms, whether that be cement and SCMs, or whether that be in the more inert, forms of bicarb in the ocean, or in, geologic storage. We also pay attention to the white spaces in the areas, and we look at things like measurement, reporting, verification, because that's been a technical pain point in this industry. And then we've also expanded the aperture to be looking at methane as well, and different types of methane reduction technologies. All right. And here's a couple examples of some of our fellows in the carbon management space. We have one company led by Yang Shi, who is running a company called Arbin, and it's a direct air capture company. It is a system that has a novel moisture swing technology that uses significantly less energy in terms of the regeneration of the sorbent. It's as if many of you are in carbon management know, it's one of the most energy intensive pathways for a lot of these technologies. How do you, after your sorbent captures the CO2, how do you get it to release? And so this technology has a mechanism where when it gets more humidity, the molecule will release the carbon. And so they are targeting less than $100 a ton in their first system that they're building right now. And then on the other end of the spectrum, on the storage part, we have another amazing company and led by Claire Nelson that's pioneering a whole new way of storing CO2 underground in mineralized form. And she's running this company called Sela. And they're actually right now drilling their injection wells in Kenya. And they've been fortunate to have secured over 1.5 million and growing in pre-purchase agreements, just in their first year alone. It's very exciting. We got pictures of both their prototypes and Claire out in the field in Kenya as they were getting the drilling started. And so that is, I think, the last. Oh, I got one more. I got one more slide here. Last thing to mention is that we do spend a bit of time with a bunch of wonderful partners in carbon tech and carbon management. In addition to NYSERDA, our wonderful partners, we've had a chance to work with DOE as well, and FECM, the Fossil Energy Carbon Management Group, as well as NETL, the National Energy Technology Lab. And this is a picture from an event that we did together about a year ago at the FECM Carbon Management Conference. And in the picture, we have some folks in the carbon space, such as Noah Deich, who is the former U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary for Carbon Management, as well as the other famous Noah, who's the CTO of Heirloom, and and other wonderful friends. And so our goal is to really help cultivate the early stage research to commercialization, those first 2 years in the carbon tech space. And I think we've done a wonderful job. And of course, it's couldn't be done without a lot of the wonderful partners that we work with, including Carbon Business Council, Direct Capture Coalition, Open Air, and a bunch of other fantastic organizations that are helping to move the entire field forward here in carbon management. Okay, I think that's it. Back over to you, Eva.
Great. Thank you so much, Andrew. As Andrew mentioned, we are open to all technology types in New York. I just want to briefly mention another partnership we have around energy storage, which benefits New York companies. You'll hear from one of those, Richard, in our fellows. We do have a partnership around energy storage with New Energy New York, which is headquartered at the University of Binghamton. In addition to directly supporting fellowships, they also provide a set of resources to companies working in energy storage in New York. Energy storage can include component materials and compositions, manufacturing methods, system management, or performance analysis. And companies working in energy storage in New York State or with a tie to New York State can receive, on top of other benefits that Activate provides, access to development, testing, and manufacturing resources hosted primarily in upstate Western New York, and through a technology consortium known as NYBEST and some of the upstate schools. But there are additional benefits, including intern support, advisors, and other resources, which are very useful to folks who are looking to build a company in energy storage. And we do our best to make sure that we share that information with all fellows, but some of it is limited to those who are based in New York, so it's often of specific benefit to New York fellows. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we're going to spotlight Caitlin and Richard, who will each share a little bit about their journey in Activate.
Yeah, thanks, Eva.
Thank you.
Caitlin, do you want to go first, or what?
Yeah, I wasn't sure. Am I the only one spotlighted, or okay, you're in. Sorry.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I'll jump in. So I'm Caitlin Suarez, CEO of a startup called Terawatts. We're working on developing a form of wireless power transmission, and we can actually run this through the ground. So everything is in the subsurface, and you can drop a transmitter and pick up electricity, in a field by plugging some things into the earth. I'm gonna take a few steps back and put myself back in my shoes when I was applying for Activate. I was a PhD student at UMass Amherst. I'm a geoscientist by training, and so I'll emphasize I didn't exactly do this research for my PhD, in which I'm commercializing today. But I found a need, and I saw my skill sets as additive to it. And at the time, I didn't even know what a CEO was or does, or how what does it mean. And I was not able to come up with a techo-economic analysis of any of the stuff I was interested in. But I can see a real solution with what we're developing. There's prototype working, and it's clear to me that this needs to become more. And so through Activate and through applying and through this past year, I have learned all of those things, and I understand what a CEO does now. And it's been transformative for me as a person, as a scientist, and thinking about moving from academic setting into commercial setting. So if that resonates with you, if you're working on something and you're not sure of the commercial aspects for it, that's where Activate fits. That's the home in which this was built for. So I definitely encourage you to apply, go through the process, reach out to fellows like us. We're happy to help, answer any questions as you go through the application. And I would say even going through it is so worth the knowledge you're going to get from this process, and you get to interact with the MDs. Andrew's phenomenal. I learned so much in the interview to final application stage with him. And so all of the staff across the board are just eager to see change in the world, and we know that lies within people like you. So thank you. Nope, Richard, you're on mute. You're still on mute. Got it.
Sorry, I tried to hotkey and then it minimized. Okay, so I guess I'll take a bit of a different approach here, describing my experience with Activate. Just like start with Activate New York and then talk about like Activate as a whole. I think um, I'm Richard May, co-founder CTO of Standard Potential. We make sodium-ion batteries. So the ecosystem here in New York is really good for batteries. Eva spoke um, briefly about New Energy New York. There's also NY Best, NYSERDA. There's a lot of like support through the state, both financially and just like ecosystem wise, with like the support from like other companies like in the battery supply chain. There's a lot of prototyping support as well. So to just talk a little bit about how those individual I guess like companies or entities have supported us. New Energy New York, NENY. So they're like an NSF engine that's based in Binghamton. A lot of financial support through there. Basically, like there's a battery Nobel laureate, Stan Winningham, that has attracted a lot of funding support from the federal government, and so like they're able to sort of distribute that funding support to startups, and we've been able to take advantage of this as well. So even mentioned like the internship program. Basically, they'll fund like an intern to do work with you basically through 12 weeks. So we've been really fortunate with the interns that we've gotten through Binghamton University, but also through Columbia, where we spun out. We actually hired one of them recently as a part-time worker to like spin out of Columbia for us. So that's been really good. They also have voucher support for doing battery prototyping. So there's a center in Binghamton, there's a center in Rochester where you can basically, if you have like a new battery chemistry or something, you can put it into like an 18650 or a 2170 cylindrical format, which is very difficult to do. I'm sure most of you that work on batteries know, like in academic labs, right? So like they have the facilities to basically allow you to do that. NY Best as well is like another battery consortium in New York State that's sort of separate but interacts closely with NENY. So they collect a lot of like the battery efforts in the state. They have like a supply chain database where you can sort of like interact with all the other battery companies that are here. So like talk about like the gigafactories that are being set up in Endicott, for example, IM3NY. There's another gigafactory, Electrovaya, that is like further upstate. But basically, like being able to like interact with those companies and like sort of understand like what are they looking for in terms of like partnerships and whatnot. That's been super useful here. NYSERDA as well is like more of like a general. They're like the energy R&D authority in New York. So they provide like a lot of funding from like early stage R&D all the way down to like pilot and demonstration support. So we actually have a grant through them as well. And interacting with the PM, like the project manager there, has been really great. Really low friction. The funding support like comes basically right away, and then like they sort of leave you to do what you need to do in order to hit those milestones. So that's been really great in advancing the company in the early days as well. And then I just like New York in general, I think, is like hitting a bit of an inflection point in terms of the hard tech startups specifically that have been like cropping up here. So like I would say, maybe like prior to Activate, prior to like 2 years ago, it was really hard to like start a hard tech startup here. Like, finding lab space, especially like if you're a startup that does chemistry, finding fume hoods, those kind of facilities like was really difficult. I think we're hitting a bit of an inflection point where the number of startups has increased to the point where you have like we're here co-located with another Activate startup, Innate, class of 2022. So that sort of speaks as well to like the startups basically sort of like bunching together in terms of like finding space to actually set up, because in New York it's difficult, right? There's the real estate in Manhattan is just too expensive to set up lab space. It's hard to find it in like the outer boroughs as well. But like with like new labs setting up various lab spaces for startups, and then there's Hacks as well, which is in New York, New Jersey. that has like lab space for a lot of startups. And then we're based here in Westchester as well. There's a lot of space cropping up like in sort of like the outskirts where like a lot of startups have been setting up. So that's been really good as well in terms of support. And then just like very briefly, I guess, like talking about Activate overall, I think, I can't speak highly enough of the MDs and FMs, like just in general, like across all of the different cities and cohorts. I think, what Andrew does like especially well is just like connecting you with like anyone that could be useful to you and your company. So like just if you're going to like an Activate event and Andrew happens to be like talking to someone, he'll pull you in if he finds that useful, and that's been like super helpful to us, just building out the network and like building partnerships both like locally and nationally. So that's been great. And then like another thing as well is just, I think, if you're on this call, you're considering starting a company, which is very difficult, right? And Activate really helps you to sort of like understand what your motivations and values are. So this is like something that I learned in that first sort of retreat that I went on. But I think like this is sort of a hot take, but if you're, the harder the thing that you're doing, like the better you have to like understand what your motivations are, right? So like a lot of you are probably taking like a big pay cut, like the opportunity cost of starting a company is like relatively high, right? So when that's the case, like it's often that you'll have to, you're like rethinking your decisions like pretty often. Like I think Activate really helps you to understand like why you're doing what you're doing, like where those motivations stem from, and that's like a really important thing in like strengthening your resolve, I think. And like just it can be like existential. So that's the kind of thing that has really helped me move forward in this process. So yeah, that's all I got. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much to Caitlin and Richard. Really appreciate you guys sharing your experience. Sorry, guys, I'm trying to reshare the presentation and it has, there we go. Momentarily. Sorry, light bug. Kerrigan, I'm getting a message that says my screen sharing is paused. I don't know if you have any idea of why that's happening. I'm just gonna try
If you could try it again. I'm not seeing anything on my side that will prevent it.
okay. If not, I'll give one more shot and then I'll just go over these last points
What I can share as well.
verbally. Let me do this. There we go. Okay, cool. Great. So a few details and common questions, and then we'll open up the floor to questions that we didn't cover. The application timeline, hopefully if you're here, you know that applications are currently open. This should read October 23rd. Let me actually, sorry, I want to make sure I'm sharing the right thing because that is.
I think that was our timeline from last year, Eva. I don't know if you have the 2020.
Yeah, it was. No, which just made me yeah, I had okay, I see. Sorry, I accidentally pulled up the with the share screen thing. It like went to another desktop, and I apologize. Then I pulled up the wrong presentation. There we go. Thanks for your patience, guys. All right, cool. We will try this one more time. There we go. Okay, applications are open now and they will close on October 23rd. So you have some time to work on your application, but I definitely encourage you to start soon if you've not already started it and to submit before the deadline. Then once you've submitted, you should expect to wait about 2 months. We will take the months of October, November, December to review internally and externally. That's all written review. And then we'll communicate decisions from that step at the end of December and invite folks to join us for video interviews followed by a finalist week. And then we will begin the fellowship for this cohort in June of 2025. For those of you who are wondering about eligibility, a couple of quick things to point out. The fellow must have a bachelor's degree and 4 years post-bac research, engineering, or technology development experience. This might be a PhD, but it does not need to be if you've been working in engineering, or if you have a master's plus a few years of technical work, those are also eligible. You need to be leading the commercial development of a hardware-based technology company for the first time. So you can't be a repeat hard tech founder, and you should be in a decision-making position within the company that you are proposing. You should be committed to full-time work for the company or project. If you are approved for the fellowship, that does not mean you need to become full-time before you are approved for the fellowship, because we understand that salaries are a thing, but you should be prepared to be full-time if you accept it. You must be legally able to work in the US for the duration of the fellowship and be able to communicate proficiently in English. Your company or project must be based in the physical or biological sciences, as we mentioned, around hard tech, and is not yet ready for. We also look like we're early stage, and so folks who are ready for full scale product sales or who have raised more than 2 million in debt and equity funding are probably a little bit too advanced to benefit from the fellowship. So those are our eligibility requirements. You can learn more about this and other questions at some upcoming events, as well as on the website, which has lots more resources and recordings of past webinars. We'll have another webinar next week that's a deep dive on carbon management. You will have heard most of it, so you're welcome to join that, but you may find it a little bit repetitive. We do go over some of the same things. We have an upcoming application webinar on the 24th. We will be having an in-person happy hour if you are already New York based and would like to join us in person on October 3rd. So please look on our Activate Apply website for upcoming events to keep learning more about Activate. Frequently asked questions, we covered some of these in the presentation. Methane contains carbon, and therefore managing methane is carbon management. If you work on carbon management and you're like, wait, but can I be part of Houston or part of Berkeley? Absolutely. Those communities also accept people across technologies. And as Andrew mentioned, we look for a variety of technologies in New York, so that we do have a small concentration of carbon management due to our partnership with NYSERDA. All folks working on physical technology with a benefit to the world are encouraged to apply. And that, I believe, is my last slide. So I'm going to stop sharing. And we will go ahead and raise your hand if you have a question. I'll also take a peek at the chat.
Oh, wait, Eva, you're on mute.
Oh, thank you, Karen. I see a question from Na.
The introduction. I was wondering, is it okay if the applicant is still ideating in terms of different approaches for carbon removal? And is that appropriate stage to be applying for Activate?
So the stage, what we generally look for is a proof of concept. So we recognize that there will be some further development and iteration, but generally speaking, scientific proof of concept, it might be a prototype, it might be like a lab scale. It doesn't need to be at full scale. You may have some ideas around other avenues you'd like to pursue. We understand that folks do pivot, but generally a little bit beyond ideation in terms of our capacity to assess the technical readiness of your company. Andrew, let me know if I misrepresented that. So two questions in the chat. One is a product that reduces methane emission of dairy cattle. That is definitely, assuming it is a hard tech based thing, which I imagine it would be, absolutely eligible to activate. Depending, some of our carbon management counts only things that are sort of dealing with carbon dioxide or methane that have already been released into the environment. So it kind of depends a little bit if we would qualify that as carbon management or not, but it certainly would meet Activate's standard of improving the world. And then I will go to the question from Helen, please.
Thanks. Hi. I was wondering, in terms of like New York City focused versus other places in New York, like how does it, do you have companies that are, based in Rochester or based near Binghamton, because you guys have those collaborations and like lab space is cheaper there and money goes further there, and then they're coming in for the programming in New York City? Or is it really everybody's like in the New York hub kind of full time?
Yeah, great question. We actually do currently have a fellow who is based in Rochester. We have in-person programming every 2 weeks, so we want you to be able to come into that. Obviously, the closer to New York City you are, the easier that is to do. If you're in Binghamton, it's a 3-hour bus ride to get into the city. Rochester is a bit further. We have had folks who've who started out in Ithaca, but they actually ended up moving down to Brooklyn just because it was a better access to some of the resources that they needed. So short version, and likewise, we have some folks in like the broader New York area in New Jersey. Essentially, if you're within a couple hours commute and you can be present for the in-person meetings, I think you can still take advantage of the program, and definitely recognize that for cost and manufacturing, sometimes being outside of New York City is ideal.
And is that something you guys would be able to help like make decisions about, like where it makes sense to be based on the company if a fellow is accepted?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think that we do ask that folks commit to moving within sort of commutable distance of New York when they accept the fellowship, in order to preserve that in-person community. But within that, I think definitely that's something that you could discuss with the managing director, fellowship manager, other advisors, other fellows as you're making basic decisions about your company.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yep. Cool. We have a question in the chat that says, are therapeutics eligible, for instance, an engineered protein? The short answer is if it does not have a non-medical application, it's generally outside of Activate scope. We do have some folks whose first market is medical, but who have secondary applications for their technology outside of the medical field. But generally, because of sort of regulatory and other industry expertise, it's not an area of focus for Activate and not something in which we're particularly well suited to support fellows. So thank you for the question. And then Thomas has his hand raised.
Yeah, hi. I think it was a very great, informative session. I was just wondering if you can speak to how the applications are evaluated. What criteria you use? Is it kind of the technical merit? Is it the fit? Is it energy transition? Let's say someone applies and has this new technology in improving oil production or natural gas production. Would that be outside of the scope of Activate? I'm not working on that, but it's just hypothetically speaking. Thank you.
Yeah, Andrew, I may look for you to fill me in on this one if I miss anything. But I would say that we look for sort of three, I'll say like three big categories of things. One is like the degree to which the tech is innovative or disruptive, but plausible. So we do take a pretty hard look at the tech and use our external experts, because we can't be experts in every field, to help us to understand both like how much the innovation could change a given industry and how likely it is to work. That's one area that we look at in the application. We also look at the positive social impact of the application. So to your point, if the goal of a technology, for instance, is to make it easier to access or produce fossil energy, like that might not be as big of an impact. But if it is around making those processes cleaner, like that might be something that would be more interesting. Or if it's something where that's the first market, but applications down the line have benefit. So that's a little bit of a judgment call, but we are looking for things that positively impact human and planetary health. And then the third thing we look at is the founder themselves. which is to say we're looking for folks who are community minded, who are genuinely interested in building their companies in community, who are coachable and interested in learning about all that it takes to run a business alongside the excellent technical knowledge that you all bring. Andrew, did I miss anything?
That was a good summary. I would just say that the process that we take, as Eva described it, can take a while. On the order of 5 months or so, because there is a lot of diligence that we do on the technology with multiple rounds of evaluation, and making sure that we have the right experts in the room for evaluating the technology, and then of course multiple rounds of engaging with you and the fellows to see if you guys are the right fit for our fellowship as well.
Can I ask a 10-second follow-up? Just thank you. So I'm a seismologist. I work on seismic monitoring, and it's heavily applied to geothermal. So it's not directly producing energy, but making it more sustainable and safer. Would that be a good fit, potentially? I mean, I know it's a process. You said it takes 5 months to get the full evaluation, but yeah.
Yeah, just generally speaking, we do have a lot of fellows who are working in, what I would call supportive technology to some of these industries. So like if your technology would make a clean energy industry easier, better, more efficient, more competitive, then I would say that that is a positive impact on the energy transition.
Thank you so much.
I'm just going to read out a question and answer from the chat. Someone asked about what is shared, is application material shared with external review under an NDA, and what should we expect in terms of information sharing? Rick, thank you for answering that. It will be reviewed by scientific and industry experts in accordance with our privacy policy. We do take some steps there to protect your information, but encourage you, of course, to market confidential and proprietary, and also advise against including critically sensitive proprietary details. And Kerrigan has linked the privacy policy in response to that question. Thank you, Kerrigan. Other questions? Okay. I don't, oh, wait, Idris. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Hi. My question is around just going back to the issue of the prototype, for instance, or something. What if, you haven't really built a prototype, but the concept is largely proven in, some different device or system, but you're just adapting or repurposing that sort of a proven concept, but you don't have a prototype?
Yeah, Andrew, I might ask you to provide a little bit more color here on sort of what we look for in terms of evidence of technical viability.
Sure. Yeah, every case is different. Ideally, building something or testing something in a lab and highlighting some data is preferable, right? In the case that you are not able to do that, I would be very clear and explicit about what has been de-risked and how have you de-risked that, and then yes, talk more thoughtfully about just the overall system and the architecture and proving out and helping us understand, where is the fundamental risk still to be done, and what your plan is to address it. But if you do have any data, even if you didn't build something, but there's off the shelf, this or whatnot, like if you're able to reference data, right, to help prove your point, that's going to be really important here.
Yeah. Thank you, Andrew, for that additional color. One thing that I generally say is that, your technology is where it is as of now. So give us the best demonstration that it will work based on where you currently are. I think to Andrew's point, being thoughtful and explaining whether it's a model, whether it's pulling from various places, and any data or proof points that you can provide. Yeah. Also, reapplicants are encouraged at Activate. So if you submit this year and it's a little too early, it won't hurt you. So feel free, if you're not sure if you're quite there, to go ahead and submit. And then if you make further progress between now and next year, you can submit again with more evidence. Great. Cool. I will go with Nat, and then I will answer the Akila question in the chat.
Thank you. My question is for Caitlin. She mentioned that she was proposing a problem-solving solutions for an area she doesn't have the research on before. So my question is, a lot of our people are very prepared in terms of scientific training, and we are having very broad interest. So we are likely to be jumping into those areas. So when we're proposing things, we are not the expert yet. So some of the proposal might have obvious knowledges that we are not aware of. So how did you come across, like, how did you cross that hurdle when you're proposing and when the experts are reviewing, and not completely disqualifying your proposal, basically?
Yeah. So I guess I'll say, I didn't like jump from doing like biology to geology. You know what I mean? Like I could see where there was a gap between what was being developed. So it's using the power through the ground. And in my expertise as a geologist, I could see the interface, and I needed to have the expertise on the power part to it. And so the co-founder is the engineer and the inventor. And so I was able to like say in the application, like, listen, there's this really interesting idea. He's coming at it from an electronic standpoint, but it's working through the earth, and we need to have this more global understanding to help scale the technology. Well, I didn't do that, like write my whole thesis on it. This is where I see the gap, and this is how I can see my skill set addressing this problem, and where Activate would fit in to give us this breadth and space to have like and create the the merging of the ideas. And I think like it kind of like feeds off into like the broader Activate is that like we're all sums of like a bigger part, and so your job as a CEO becomes to bring in the minds that are going to all collectively think about this idea and make this happen. So it kind of will speak to a bit of your growth in as a CEO, but obviously if you can demonstrate like I've been working on this thing, it prompted me to see that this other thing a little bit outside my field is going to help create the masterpiece of whatever it is you're working on. There from my perspective there's room for it, but also happy if Andrew wants to add color to it. I think also like speaks to Andrew and Eva for like having that type of belief and like seeing the possibility of this like a little bit more flexible I guess viewpoint on what makes a scientist or what makes a great product happen.
Great. Thank you, Caitlin. Appreciate that. We're getting a little close to time, so I'm going to respond to Akila in the chat. Akila, to compare the New York option to the Anywhere option, I think all of our in-person communities have a very similar rhythm, where you are coming together about once every other week with your fellow community, your managing director, as well as speakers, ecosystem partners, et cetera, in person. We all manage a little bit differently, inviting external guests into those, but all invite external guests in some ways. So in addition to connecting with the Activate community, there are frequent in-person opportunities to connect with investors, potential advisors, potential employees, and other folks within the local ecosystem. We also are able, because we are located in one geography, to build up a little bit of expertise in lab spaces, for instance, or good accelerators in the area, great places to post your job, great working spaces, et cetera. So I think there is a concentration of knowledge around how to start something up in one specific place, whereas of course our Anywhere community folks are everywhere. That said, the Anywhere community is a great option, particularly folks who are far away from one of the metro areas where we do have an in-person community. I think someone mentioned things being lower cost outside of New York. That is also true in terms of being outside of Berkeley, Boston. So just a way of saying, like, ultimately, what I would think about is two things. One is to think about where is the best place overall for you to start your company. That can include things that about that environment, that industry, things you'd be close to, as well as your personal desire to live in any given area, and then apply to the community that aligns with that. As I mentioned, you can apply or you can indicate interest in more than one community. And you can certainly attend webinars, chat with fellows, et cetera, from multiple communities to learn a little bit more about the process as you go. I saw Andrew put his hand up.
Thanks, Eva. Yeah, I did want to mention one follow-up thing to the question that Na presented. I thought it was a fantastic question. And because you don't have to be an expert in everything. Certainly when you go out into the world and build this thing, you're going to be looking for a lot of other experts that you can bring along to help support and building this thing that you're trying to bring into the world. And humility is going to be important in that, and the ability to communicate well and to share your story and to learn. And sometimes when you're building something that doesn't exist, you're not just building some new technology or a new company, but sometimes you're also building or helping to build a new industry. And then so we try to look for all of these different things. It's hard in the application as we go through this, but that's why we take our time. That's why it can take 5 months or so to go through all of this. And I'm just sharing that from first principles as you are going in about building this company, that you should be thoughtful about how do you build this coalition and a community to support you as you go and do this thing. And so we do tend to look for a little bit of that too in the application as we start to evaluate the fellows and the people part of this, because at the end of the day, any organization is just a group of people, and it's important, right, to build that coalition as you continue to build your technology and ultimately get to where you want to go and where you see the world in the future. So just wanted to add that little bit. Hopefully that's helpful for you, Nan, and others in the room.
Great. I see that we're a little bit over time, so thank you for staying with us for a few extra minutes. I want to let you go. Thank you, Andrew, for those closing inspiring thoughts. I think it's a great place to land. If you do have more questions, Kerrigan mentioned you can go to our activate.org/apply and register as interested or to start an application. And then you'll get lots more information that way. There are also 2 email addresses: apply@activate.org or newyork@activate.org. So if you do have more questions that you didn't get a chance to ask today, please go ahead and reach out to those emails or get in touch with us through the website. Thank you, Kerrigan, for dropping those into the chat. We really appreciate your time today. And for those of you who are applying, wish you the best of luck. For those of you who are considering applying, wish you the best of luck too and encourage you to do so. We look forward to reading your applications.